Welcome back. It's Jason Hartman with another amazing lesson for you. And today we're going to talk about something that has been very lucrative for many people. I'm sure many people have lost money in it too. But I definitely know some people who've made a lot of money in the MHP part of income property investing, or the mobile home park. So we're going to talk about the creativity involved in this investment and some of the opportunities, some of the pitfalls. So let's learn the characteristics. And again, mobile home parks are sometimes referred to in the biz as MHPs, MHP investing. We're going to learn the advantages, of course, and the disadvantages, as we all do. But first of all, I want to talk to you about something called Lonnie deals. Now, this is a gentleman named Lonnie Scruggs, and he wrote this book called Deals on Wheels. He's written many other books, by the way. At the time of this recording, I have no affiliation with him. But I wanted to tell you about this because it presents an interesting opportunity. If you are listening to this course and taking the course, and you are not in the position where you have a lot of money, maybe you're just starting out, and you're looking to get your first real estate deal under your belt, and you're looking to get in with very little capital, Lonnie deals could be the answer. If you want to buy a mobile home park, you might have to pay $2, $3, $4 million. You can certainly get little ones for less than that are maybe just $200,000. The prices are all over the board. But with a Lonnie deal, you can get in really inexpensively. And this is a term known in the industry. I did not make up this phrase, Lonnie deals. It's been around ever since he popularized it many years ago. And basically what this involves is not buying a mobile home park at all. It just involves buying a mobile home. In fact, buying a used mobile home that's in need of rehab and doing some minor improvements to it, and then turning around and reselling it on a rent-to-own or a lease option basis or a seller financing basis. And you can make some pretty nice yields in this. For you bigger investors who are listening, this probably will not be of interest to you because it's very hard to make it scale. You're dealing with very small amounts of money, and it's probably not going to be worth your time to do Lonnie deals, even though the returns on them can be very high. Let me give you a little example of how this might work. I'm not going to calculate the returns for you, but just suffice it to say that they could be very good. So for example, if you were to go and look at a mobile home that is for sale, and again, these are hard to sell, they're not very liquid, there's not a big market to buy them except by investors. You might look at a mobile home that's for sale for $5,000. I mean, that's pretty cheap for a house, right? And then you might negotiate with the seller and say, well, I'll give you $2,000 or $3,000. Let's say you get it for half price. You get it for $2,500. I know you're probably thinking that's incredibly cheap. And depending on the market at the time you happen to be listening to this, those prices will vary. Sometimes you'd have to pay $10,000 or $15,000 to get anything. But sometimes you might be able to get it for $5,000 or even less, like I'm talking about. And you turn around and you sell it to someone on one of those three things: a rent-to-own scenario, a lease option scenario, which is basically the same thing. Maybe that's just a matter of what you're calling it, or on a seller financing scenario where you sell the home, the mobile home, but you hold the note and you carry the note, but you transfer the title of that to that buyer. So you could do it on one of these formats. And say you put an ad out and you say, look, I'll sell it for $500 down, and here you're looking for a subprime borrower, someone who hasn't been real responsible with their finances, and they're in the position where they really need something that offers terms. And you could charge them maybe, I don't know, 10% interest. There are some compliance issues you got to be careful of. There's a big one called Dodd-Frank that is complicated, and it's over 2,000 pages, I believe, this bill. So, basically that means nobody can understand it. And basically this puts some requirements on the terms in terms of seller financing. So be careful of this kind of stuff. There are certainly laws about it. You have to be aware of them. This is not meant to be a lesson on those. That could take hours and hours and hours in and of itself. But the basic idea of the Lonnie deal is that you sell the property, you finance it, or do a rent-to-own scenario for that buyer, and they can pay you a lot more than you paid for that house. Even if you paid, say, $5,000 or $10,000 for it, you can seller finance it or do a rent-to-own deal and get a really nice yield on that investment. And you can get started with very little capital. So we're talking about buying a mobile home park here, but I wanted to definitely make you aware of this concept called Lonnie deals, named after Lonnie Scruggs, because it's an interesting way you can get started with very little capital. Again, not for the big investors. You're not going to want to mess around with that. It's just going to take too much time for too small an amount of money. You need to deploy more capital than it makes sense to do Lonnie deals with. So the characteristics of mobile home parks, what are they? Well, the primary income comes from renting the ground, renting the land that those mobile homes sit on. And sometimes you'll have park-owned homes that you own as part of your property, if you will, where you own some of the mobile homes, maybe all of them, maybe a few of them, maybe none of them. Again, there's a lot of complexity to mobile home park investing, so this is probably not for a newbie. Okay, I don't want to say never, but it's complicated. There's a lot of creativity to some of this stuff. So tenants who own their own mobile home, they will obviously pay you rent to place it there and use that land. Some tenants will rent both their mobile home and the space where it resides. So that's sort of a blend of, owning the mobile home park and doing a Lonnie deal potentially at the same time, where you can seller finance, rent to own, lease option that mobile home within your park, but you still own the land that it sits on. In many cases, like I said, this is done on a rent-to-own arrangement, and it could be a form of a Lonnie deal for sure. So one of the difficulties of mobile home park investing, or MHP investing, is that, getting financing from a bank is not easy. Banks look at this as a fringe asset class. A lot of things can go wrong. It's complicated. They look at it as pretty risky. It is possible to get financing through a bank, but a lot of the financing is done on a seller carryback, not on the mobile home itself, as in a Lonnie deal, but is in the entire mobile home park, where the seller might carry a note on that property, and you can do a lot of creative things there that could be very lucrative, and that's definitely done through seller carryback notes. So some of the advantages, high rates of cash flow definitely can be there. Minimal structures to repair. I mean, you might have a mobile home park and it might not even have a clubhouse. You might not own a single structure. Of course, you have infrastructure because you will own the roads within the park. You own the land, so there may be grass to be cut, trees to be trimmed, things like that. There may be an entry gate to maintain, but there may be a clubhouse and a pool and a rec center. In some nicer mobile home parks, they have all sorts of amenities, just like a nice condo complex or apartment complex would have. But by and large, you'll have less in terms of structures unless you start owning a bunch of the mobile homes as well as the park. You can scale and and build a very large portfolio. And now I do want to say something about that, by the way. I have made probably 80 or so offers over the years on mobile home parks. Several years ago, maybe, I don't know, I want to say 7 years ago, 6, 7 years ago, I did tie one of them up None of my other offers were accepted because there is a lot of competition, or at least there was at the time, a lot of competition in this arena for people that wanted to buy them. It seems like Lonnie and the other promoters of this stuff got the word out to investors, and then of course the market became a bit oversaturated with investors, and people were making multiple offers on these properties and just lining up to buy them. So I only got one under contract and then let it go during the due diligence phase because it needed a lot of very expensive road repair and infrastructure. So again, you can scale, but if you want to get good deals, it's easy to buy things if you're willing to overpay for them. That's the basic philosophy of anything in life, right? But if you want to get a good deal, that becomes harder because it's harder to get your offers accepted, right? So it is possible to scale because they tend to be larger size investments. But again, it can be difficult to even acquire the assets in the first place. Multiple opportunities to drive cash flow. You can apply a lot of creativity here, just like you can with a push appreciation that we talked about in apartments, industrial properties, office properties, retail properties. There's some creativity that can be applied here that you can't do in the arena of my favorite asset class, good old humble single-family homes. I still love them, I gotta tell you. I've been around all of these things, and at the time of this recording, I am actually buying a pretty large mobile home park, and that's actually a combination. Here's where it gets complicated again too, of this particular one that I'm buying. It's got a restaurant on it. It's got a mobile home park component to it, but it also has an RV park. So what's the difference between an RV park and a mobile home park? Well, a mobile home park is where the mobile homes are brought in and they're sitting there and they're not very easy to move. It costs a lot of money to move them, but they technically are not built in or attached to the land, so they are mobile homes. But an RV park is someone with a motorhome who is just driving around the country and they're on vacation and they want to pull into a place for one night or 1 week or I don't know, maybe for a month, and they're not considered as permanent as the mobile home park resident. Okay, so that's the distinction. So again, complex. A lot to it, okay? They tend to have high cap rates and multiple strategies for driving income and cash flow. Ground rent tends to be relatively low, meaning, a lot of times you can raise the rent. You can start sub-metering utilities and charge for utilities and create additional income there if the seller of the mobile home park hasn't done it already. Now, some of the disadvantages, difficult to get financing. We talked about that. Tenants, you're kind of dealing with the lower echelon here. I'm trying to be politically correct, but you're dealing with a lower echelon here. Mobile home park tenants tend to be, although it's not always true, okay, but they tend to be at the lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum, and there tends to be more turnover, higher default rates, things like that. Remember how we talked about one of the advantages before, that you don't have much in terms of structures to maintain usually? But the downside of that is you also don't have very much to depreciate. And remember, as we've talked about on prior lessons, this kind of depreciation is the wonderful kind. This is a tax advantage. It's a non-cash write-off. It's the holy grail of tax benefits because it is a non-cash or phantom write-off. And, it's a great opportunity. Remember, when I talk about taxes, this is not something to be dismissed quickly. Think about it. Taxes are the single largest expense any of us have in our lives. So we've got to find a way to save on taxes legally so that we can minimize our tax burden and accelerate our wealth creation. So the mobile home parks, even though some of the items in the mobile home park can be depreciated on a faster schedule, which is good, you really don't have that much usually in terms of stuff that you can depreciate, because remember, the land is not subject to depreciation tax benefits. Only the infrastructure and the structures built on the land can be depreciated. Okay, and it's critical to have trustworthy management in a mobile home park. And I should also say, it's not only critical to have it, but it's hard to find it because people living in mobile home parks, if you have an on-site manager, they tend to not be the higher echelon of people in terms of socioeconomic status, education, etc. So it is harder to find good management for sure. They tend to require much more creativity in financing and management, and capturing optimal returns requires a lot of attention and organization and management. Okay, so deals on wheels, as we talked about here, right? What are your action items? Well, research and articulate what you believe to be the best strategy for investing in mobile home parks. Just a paragraph or two, and again, this is very subjective. So whatever it is, it's just your idea of your best strategy. Use the template provided and explain this, and then upload a screenshot and you'll get your badge. And I look forward to talking with you on the next lesson.